Right, so I'm joined now by political analyst Ebrahim Harvey. Thank you so much for joining us. Looking at that clip, it strikes me that Kgalema Motlanthe, one of perhaps the most respected faces in the ANC still. Does he speak of integrity in your view?
Yeah, no, having written his biography, I know Kgalema very well. But I must tell you, it's very important to place Motlanthe in perspective, He's essentially a constitutionalist. And that's been the problem. I had repeated debates with him. A lot of the problems doesn't lie with necessarily, what the Constitution says and deviations from it. I think what Motlanthe should have did was first begin with sketching where the ANC is at the moment, this crisis-ridden situation it is, before he addressed. I mean, certainly you can see he's driving towards cleansing, the processes of nomination, that there's no cheating. But the whole question of an upright moral integrity is what Motlanthe has been talking about for years. And if you go back to the Stellenbosch conference of 2002, it's 20 years ago. Go and see they've been repeating these things of renewal, upright morality, and as the crisis deepens and corruption grew, so did you have. I see this really as more of the same that they've been singing. It's important, however, in the sense that, they asked him to do this. I think he's probably the most upright and moral and, filled with integrity, really, of all the ANC leaders. Motlanthe is that figure, I don't think anything has stopped all the accusations of corruption with him. But I think this time what he's done is to abstract the Constitution from what has been happening to the ANC. This is the problem. The people who go on township protests, they don't go because of these kind of perceptions of the Constitution, upright morality. They go because of policy issues. The ANC's made a mistake about they've got the correct policies. All they need to do is to implement. This is the big problem. The township protests are not taking place because of some problem with the Constitution. It's because of underlying economic social policies governing basic services delivery in the townships. That is the problem. And I've had many arguments and debates with him, Adam Becky, and all of them, Trevor Manuel, keep on coming back to this problem. That it's the departure from the Constitution, a lack of integrity, etc. And this is the problem.
So you're suggesting that they're kind of missing the zeitgeist of where South African people are at?
But this is what I kept in my columns and writings all the time. And I had the same debates with Mbeki when I interviewed him twice. They go from one to the next. They repeat the same thing. And this is the biggest problem because they fail to address the root cause of the problem. The townships are not burning. An unstoppable township protest for 24 years, really, because of the Constitution, is because of the neoliberal swing in the policies of the ANC. That's why the RDP office was shut down in 1996, and here came up the neoliberal macroeconomic framework 3 weeks later, and 3 months later, and that's why you've got the Basic Municipal Servants Act, the Municipal Structures Act of 2000, which commercialize and corporatize basic services in the township. That's why you've got Joburg Water, City Power.
Nevertheless,
this is where the problems lie.
I hear what you're saying, sort of ideologically they're missing the mark in your view. But I mean, if you look at the issues they're facing, I mean, just today, George Mashamba of the Integrity Commission confirming that Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana did appear before them yesterday. And this, of course, is in connection with the allegation, and a complaint has been laid, of sexual harassment at a Kruger Park lodge. He says, of course, he's innocent. There's scandal after scandal. There's concerning things that are coming up. Phala still remains to be ventilated. There's growing unhappiness that the president is not speaking out about this issue. And, as you say, there's this line about let's do the right thing. I mean, what Kgalema Motlanthe was saying today actually goes a step further than step aside. I mean, he's saying even parents who default on child maintenance need to be barred from standing. I mean, how realistic is that, bearing in mind that even the step-aside rule, which relates really just to people who are charged, is difficult to implement and gets a huge amount of resistance from certain sections of the party?
No, man, it's abstract. Mutlante, and honestly, I don't know what he's talking about. I mean, the question of maintenance, why people are not paying maintenance could be, I mean, we're sitting the worst unemployment crisis and poverty levels in post-apartheid South Africa. So you can't say, but this is how Mutlante can be very abstract at times around moral issues, you know. I mean, there could be various legitimate reasons why. I mean, there's been a historical problem of people not paying maintenance and so on, but the root cause of it could have little to do with moral integrity and much to do with unemployment crisis and how people have been affected. So the first place to speak like that is pretty abstract, you know, and problematic as far as I'm concerned, you know.
Yeah, and also, you know, you've got to walk your talk because yesterday we spoke to the Financial Sector Conduct Authority and they told us that the ANC was deducting money from their workers' salaries, not paying it into their provident fund, and keeping it to try and recycle for further payments, most likely. They've now been forced to pay 10 million rand a month until they repay those provident funds. We know their financial problems, but that is surely a party that is not walking its talk.
Yeah, but you're just mentioning some issues. There's so many issues, you know. I mean, it's for 2 years, 4 years that the ANC has not been paying the salaries and not paying in provident fund monies and even pension, I mean, tax deducted has not been paid over. This has been going on all the time. You know, the ANC is faced with such a multiplicity of crises, you know, simultaneously. And it's really a problem in 4 months before the ANC National Electoral Conference. You can see what Ramaphosa is facing, an impeachment process in Parliament, the Falafala Gate, and really he's been his own worst enemy. You can see how he dealt with the media, very evasive, let the law take its course, very technical. I think, you know, to a large extent, Ramaphosa has placed himself in this major predicament, really, 4 months before the electoral conference, you know. And the biggest challenge for him really now, that all other challenges are dwarfed by what has happened on the farm. You can see how the opposition are pulling ranks in Parliament and going for an impeachment process, you know, and seeing that as a priority and, you know, relegating other differences that they might have. And the biggest challenge for him really now is what happened on his farm.
Yeah. And of course, we're in the run-up now to their December elective conference, and that can be quite fractured. But bigger than that is the 2024 general election. Polls this week indicating the ANC is heading for historic lows. Even in their own policy documents, they acknowledge this. I would imagine that you would suggest it's because they're just completely on the wrong track. A lot of people are saying there's still time to course correct. If you were to advise the ANC on how to course correct, what would you say? Would it be show a clear sign that you're serious about dealing with corruption, even at local government level, so that ordinary people see that the party is prepared to act with strength when it comes to corruption, which, let's face it, has done people out of jobs, has in many ways crippled our economy? What advice would you give to the ANC to course correct at this point?
No, the anti-corruption drive that Ramaphosa, you know, no doubt has made some gains. That's not the key advice I would give the ANC is to revisit the policies governing underlying service delivery in the townships. That is the biggest problem. I mean, why have the townships been burning unstoppably since June 2004, a Free State it started? It has continued non-stop. I mean,
isn't it mostly because of the corruption at local government level? Sorry to interrupt, but just explain to me what they're doing wrong. Isn't it about corruption at local level? Lack of service delivery?
No, corruption has been there. As you've seen with the Zondo, it's endemic. It's been there at all levels. And I've argued that, in fact, the Zondo Commission focused on SOEs. We need an investigation into local government. I believe the local government corruption is probably even maybe going to be worse than what you've discovered at SOEs. But that's on the corruption issue. The other thing that interacts somewhat with corruption, you know, and incompetence is the policy regime of the ANC. Why do you think, I mean, you've got prepaid water, electricity meters that's been forced down the throats of people. in townships. Nobody goes there, nobody looks at it, how terribly unhappy people are. Often in winter, there's no water, there's no electricity, unless you're registered as an indigent, which is a very stigmatizing and demeaning process. And that's probably why there's been a low take-up in townships to register for the indigency. But those are not issues the ANC looks at, even at its policy conference. It never, really engaged with these issues. And most unfortunately, because that is where I insist that that is the biggest problem. The ANC doesn't want to concede, and they keep on telling you they have the right policies, and the failure is to implement it. Whereas, in fact, it's not the case at all. They have wrong policies since they took office in 1994.
Well, thank you so much. Interesting to hear your views. We do appreciate it. That is political analyst Ebrahim Harvey there.